The opinions you hear on Your Mountain from individual hosts or guests do not necessarily represent those of Your Mountain, our sponsors, or other entities we're affiliated with professionally or otherwise. You've waited long enough. Go listen to the show.
There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is Your Mountain. Just start.
Well, I think that's typically how this would work. Somebody has to. It's usually you.
All right. I'm gonna.
Might as well. I mean, we're on the stupid computer. I mean, we could just sit here all day.
Could we clip this part?
No, I don't know how.
Right.
I don't know how.
All right. Fine. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. I'm your host, David Williams, Nephi Cole, co-host extraordinaire.
Hi, Dave.
Still learning this new technology. I didn't know how we were doing the countdown, the count in for, or whatever we call it.
Don't the numbers pop up on your screen too?
Yeah, but in the past, you go
I don't need
3,
to
then
go,
you wait for 3 seconds, and then you start.
I know, but we don't need to do that anymore because the machine does it for us. It holds up like it does like a countdown timer for us. So why would I do it? It would do a countdown timer, then I'd do a countdown timer.
So now there's just this giant mistake at the beginning of this.
Wow,
it's beautiful. We're one giant mistake anyway, I think, so it makes sense. And we're starting the whole podcast about talking about mistakes we made.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be the theme.
We screwed up. Real sorry. We screwed up.
Yeah.
It happens. Here's the disclaimer. Like there was another guy that called me the other night. We were talking about, it's like, in October you said, and I was like, I don't remember what I said yesterday. How do you expect me to remember what I said in October? Like, just like, sorry.
We weren't wrong about that. This one.
I don't remember. I don't even know what I said. I didn't go back and listen to it. I just tried to get back. I was like, now what do you think that I said? Let's talk through that. Because it's like, I don't remember.
This one we were just incomplete is maybe the way I describe it. We had one fairly significant error in saying that a bill had died.
Mm-hmm. It's not dead yet.
It's not dead, and it really is.
Sorry, Idaho. Sorry, really department. Sorry, department. We in fact, the funny part was I was at Idaho lobbying another bill. Like, I was there for a different thing. And I look, and on the agenda for this committee, I'm just walking past this committee room. I'm like, oh, hey, look, we just talked about that. I'd better go in and listen. So there I was.
You go in and listen, and you're like, this sounds like it's not dead.
It sounds like it's alive to me. And, had some friends from the department in there, some friends of yours. We all talked a lot. It was great. Other than the part about having to say, like, yeah, you might not want to listen to our podcast this week where we say that this doesn't exist anymore, because clearly it does.
It's out
and
there.
What that is,
it still might not exist, but let's
revisit
it.
It's not dead yet, and
right.
It probably won't officially be dead for a couple of weeks. Because what it is, we talked about, it's actually the rules. It's a new sets of rules that are coming out from Idaho Game and Fish Department, specifically dealing with technology. And so these rules that we had run under the assumption that that this package was gone. It wasn't. It was just waiting to be heard. And so now it's been heard in committee, and but it doesn't look like it's moving. It's unpopular with some very important lawmakers in that state. And so it looks like that those rules are not going to gain the approval. That's what we think. But technically they're not dead yet. They're just kind of, somebody might call this a pocket veto, or say like they're in the desk, or they just haven't been moved, and it doesn't look likely that they will. But technically they're not dead. And so what those rules dealt with, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, before you get to I was going to get to a little background about where this came from, and then you can talk about the specifics of it. But at the highest level, it was hunters and others are starting to have concerns from a fair chase and hunting ethics standpoint about some of the new hunting technology that's been hitting the market recently over the past several years, right? And like, is this appropriate to be used in hunting in Idaho? And other states are grappling with this too. We're just talking about Idaho because it's ripe right now. And because of that, the Idaho Fish and Game Department in 2024 created this Hunting and Advanced Technology Group, it's otherwise called the HAT Group, and brought together like various interests. And I think it was about 24 people came to the table. And the idea was, they went through meetings, learning sessions, information gathering, a lot of discussion, and came up with some set of recommendations that they sent to the Fish and Game Commission in the spring of 2025. And a couple of the recommendations were unanimous, and a couple of them had nearly unanimous support, but not complete support. And that information and those recommendations served as the basis for this rulemaking that the department undertook about the use of various technologies in hunting. And that rulemaking in Idaho had to be approved by the legislature, both chambers of the House and the Senate of the legislature. And so that's where we are right now, is that the approval process of those regulations that were created through this public process. And it's created some controversy. So maybe we should talk about what some of those proposals are, and maybe that's where you were going to go, like what some of the technologies are and proposals in those regs that are being considered. And
specifically they were talking about drones, transmitting trail cameras, and thermals are some of the more controversial things. And so, and the funny thing is,
I think too, right?
And night vision. Yeah, night vision and thermal, like I would be, they're not the same thing, but like everybody treats them like they're the same thing.
That's why I said a separate thing, because they're different.
Yeah, they are different. And here's how they're different. Night vision is just, for those who don't know, we'll geek out now. Night vision is simply the augmentation of existing real light. So what you're doing is you're just amplifying light many, 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 many times so you can just walk around and, if you've got your goggles on, it looks like daytime. Thermal gives you the ability to read a different signature of light that you could not normally see. It would be, you read heat. And so basically what you can feel, we all feel, you get close to a stove, you feel the heat, right? Well, that's because radiation is coming off of that. And if you get the right sensor, you can feel the radiation coming off of every object, hot or cold. So that gives you the ability, even if there's zero light, as long as something is radiating energy or not radiating energy, it allows you to build an image off that. So that's thermal, and that's how thermal works. They're pretty different in their application, because what thermal allows you to do, typically thermal lets you, it lets you detect something that you maybe could not detect before. And that's the main advantage of thermal. It's like, it's detection, right? Night vision doesn't typically allow you to detect something. It gives you better eyesight, right? It allows you to see in the darkness. But if something was camouflaged in the real world, it's camouflaged under night vision. It's just, you're seeing the world in gray, but you're seeing it like an animal with a better vision capability would be able to see it at night. Thermal, you're seeing something that nothing on Earth can see. It's allowing you, sometimes I'll say it's like deer radar. That's what you're
Predator
getting.
Can see it, I think.
No, predators can't see thermal.
The Predator. Like, remember the movie?
The Predator.
Yeah. Like, if the Predator's out there.
Yeah. But if you remember, he only sees it when his mask is on. Remember?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Because it's just like real thermal. Like when the Predator takes off his mask to fight Arnold Schwarzenegger mano a mano, that's not thermal anymore. Now he's see, this is exactly how hunting should be, Dave. Let's create the corollary. There's consensus here. There's consensus. It's not, there's some folks that are concerned about this. The consensus on thermal is this. It's just like when the Predator wanted to fight Arnold Schwarzenegger and he wanted it to be fair. What did he do? Takes off the mask, right? He makes himself visible. Well, that's kind of, I think, how we've come to a consensus on hunting big game. if you're using technology that gives you an unfair advantage over the big game, aka the predator with the invisible suit and the thermal, I think we all agree that that's not a fair way to fight Arnold Schwarzenegger, whether Arnold Schwarzenegger is Arnold Schwarzenegger or an elk. And there's actually wide consensus on this across the hunting spectrum. If you're hunting big game, if it's that mono fair chase hunt, then these tools, the consensus is they don't belong on the table. And it doesn't matter whether it's thermal or thermal or night vision or drones, right? These things, like, that's not their place. Do they have a place? Well, sure, they have a place. They have a place in things like, and I think we talked about this on our last episode. Things like, feral animal control and all, yeah. But here's the problem, and here's what they ran into in Idaho. Here's why this is the argument is because there are folks that believe that the rules are, because of the way that they were crafted and because of some statutory limitations in Idaho, they're applied too broadly, right? So people are saying like, well, we agree that you shouldn't have these tools when you're going to chase giant bull elk. That said, there are folks that believe that if you're trying to control wolves, that thermal should be on the table. And so that's where it's caught up. You have this issue where the rule, because it's applied so broadly, you've lost a key constituency that you need in order to get the rule over the hump.
Well, and let's talk about that just really briefly. So in Idaho, the way the regulation is written, the way the rule is written that's before the legislature, no person shall take big game animals. And it gives you and I'll just use drones as an example. Or no, let's use night vision as an example. It's pretty straightforward. No person may take big game animals from August 30th through December 31st with night vision technology, including for scouting, hunting, or retrieval. Okay.
And
seems pretty straightforward. But before we get to the details of it, but the term big game animals is actually a defined term in Idaho statute. And in Idaho statute, big game animals includes mule deer, whitetail deer, elk, moose, pronghorn, bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, California bighorn sheep, mountain goat, black bear, mountain lion, and gray wolf. And it's particularly that very last one, gray wolf, that seems to be the thing that folks are circling and saying, we're on board with a lot of this other stuff, but for population control purposes, like and Idaho has a bunch of statutes about managing wolf populations, right, and trying to keep them at a certain level and needing, I think the argument in Idaho is you need a whole bundle of sticks of methods in order to try and control wolf populations. And so this is one of the things people want to use, right?
Yeah. Dave, some people might say that they screwed up in how they started. Because, the issue is if you're taking some things that are dissimilar and you're trying to apply similar rules to dissimilar things, well, that might not work the best. And so something very similar and yet very dissimilar happened in Wyoming, right? Wyoming doesn't have the same argument. Why? Because Wyoming has a dual designation for wolves in the state of Wyoming. Wolves inside a certain area, they are managed as what? A trophy animal.
But they're even different, even another subset. So Wyoming's got big game, but then there's a subset that's trophy game. And then we have another category that's predator. So
yes,
whereas Idaho but even has all these species listed as big game,
everything's jumbled together.
Wyoming has a separate category of trophy game that would be bighorn sheep, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, grizzly bear, wolf, mountain lion, right? Trophy.
And so but again, the issue here is what I'm, trying to draw attention to is the predator designation, right?
Sure. No, I get
where in Wyoming, it's the predator designation. And when you've got something like a predator where you're saying, look, the only way to effectively hunt these things is at night. And the only tools to effectively do that. And if you ask, that professionals at the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, USDA, APHIS, Wildlife Services, what they're going to use to go after things that are walk around at night and hide, like feral hogs, like coyotes, what are they going to use? They're going to use thermals. And so the problem is if you take this class of animals that are, predators. You're saying we have to control the numbers, and you put them into the wrong area, and you take the tools off the table that are effective for management. That's where they're running into this kind of debate about like, well, what do we do in this case? And I'd say that once again, I think that they took everything. They tried to throw the blanket too broadly, and that's happened before. There are other states that have done this, and I actually think one state that's a good example of doing it right versus doing it wrong. And again, the issue is that when you're trying to create a rule and you're applying it too broadly, you're just not going to have the right tool for the job. It's you're hitting something with a hammer when you need a scalpel to address it. And Utah did something similar to this recently. And at first I was critical of it. And now I kind of wonder if it's not the right approach, which is tailoring. Utah had an area where they had too many applicants and a lot of pressure in a given hunt area for mule deer. And lots of people wanted to go hunt mule deer there. And Utah was trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we get more people in there? Well, and what they did is they elected to limit the types of weapons that they would allow to be used for the hunt in that area, which they pushed people towards more traditional weapons. And at first I was, I had some thoughts about like, it was all about the optics on the type of rifle that people were using. And at first I kind of questioned that, but now I actually think it was kind of brilliant. The idea that they said, you know what, we're not going to do, we're not going to sit down as a commission and create one rule to rule them all across the state. We're going to use specific tools in these given areas and allow these things to be used in a more tailored basis. And I think that that's what they're going to have to do, I think, with thermals in Idaho with regards to wolves. They're going to have to make sure that they leave some things on the table, and it doesn't have to be all the time. And that's the things, like, you don't have to craft a rule across the board that says, hey, nobody can ever use a thermal for wolves. You can say, like, during this time of year in these areas, you can't use them. And in these other areas for these purposes, you can. And I think that that's, they've kind of done that. And so I don't want to, it's more complex than I'm making it. But I think as agencies take that approach and that more specific approach to dealing with the issues, I think you're going to get better results, and you do build the coalitions that you need to pass this type of rule.
Well, go back. Don't listen to our podcast last week about it.
No, do listen to it though.
No, listen to it, but no, it was incomplete and maybe slightly inaccurate, because we did say we thought it had died. It might still, right? These regs might still die. But as of right now, they're alive. They're being debated.
We're imperfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any more on that. You have any more on that? Probably,
but I should stop.
We got a few other things to talk about, I think. So maybe we stop for a second. I'm going to go quick on one. And this is partially because it's fresh, and I haven't even had a chance to review the complaint on this in its entirety. So we're just kind of teeing this up, and we may end up talking about this more. But let's move north from Idaho to Alaska. So in Alaska, we've talked about this before. There's been, for a number of years, actually probably for decades, there's been a debate about whether there should be a 211-mile long haul road into a mining district allowed to be constructed near the Brooks Range of Alaska, which Brooks Range kind of forms the southern end of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So just for a piece of geography of where this is, far northern Alaska, 211-mile haul road. There has been, for years, controversy around this. A number of hunting organizations and hunters in Alaska, as well as subsistence hunters, tribes, there's been objection to this proposal about cutting this road through really large intact habitat because of the potential impacts it could have on things like caribou, for example. And and other wildlife in the region. And that the fear being it's going to create fragmentation, this new road, and cause harm. Right? On the flip side of this, the proponents of this project have said this could open up, create new jobs, create new revenue for the state, for local economies. Being able to develop some of these mineral resources, and this road is essential to being able to get there and open up this mining district where a bunch of these materials are known to be. And so it's created this controversy, and I don't want to go. There's so much. This is why I'm a little bit nervous about diving into it, because there's so much that goes into this with the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, for example, and the Alaska National Interest Land Conservation Act. There's all these laws that interplay and set up this, but at the highest level, here's what's happened. There were these two public land orders that were issued in I want to say it was in the 1970s. I'm trying to, actually had it written down, and I'm trying to find where I put it, which is driving me nuts, that I can't find it. But there are these two public land orders that created a withdrawal of lands that prevented this road from being developed. Let's see, Public Land Order 5150 and 5180, and they were issued for avoiding emissions associated with road traffic and development of the Ambler mining district, as well as the Alaska liquefied natural gas pipeline. There are, hang on, this is driving me nuts. I got to find the exact dates because I know I had it here. There we go. Public Land Order 5150, 5180, issued in 1971 and 1972, respectively. They withdrew lands along what is now the Dalton Highway and Transatlantic Pipeway System corridor for mineral entry. And the lands have been under BLM jurisdiction for decades. What the administration is currently looking at doing is they've lifted those public lands orders and are working towards transferring lands to the state to enable the construction of that road. And so a number of groups just filed a lawsuit challenging the repeal of those public lands orders, and have a whole list of reasons why they think that was unlawful. Again, without diving into tons of the details and the interplay of all the various laws, all I can say is this is a thing that is happening right now. This lawsuit has been filed, and it'll play itself out over the course of the next couple of years, probably, to see if repealing those public lands orders was unlawful or not. But it's one step or one tool some of these groups have to try and either slow or stop the development of that mining road. There you go. That's all I know. And I didn't do a very good job of explaining it.
All right. Well, what are the negatives? Let's see. All right. Well, there you go. You want to talk about it more or move on?
No, that was all I wanted to do. Unless you want to talk about it more. It was more of just an informational piece.
I'm going to introduce this as I'm going to add this now to a new segment that we're doing here at Your Mountain, that everything we're going to talk about for the rest of the show will fall into our new segment. Are you ready for the segment, Dave? So you're going to present this issue to me, and I'll present an issue to you, or, whichever. And then you're going to give me your response about whether this is important, not important, or just meh. And so we're going to call this, it's major, minor, or meh. And so here's the question for you, Dave. So you just gave me that, your synopsis of that. So that issue, is this a major issue, a minor issue, or a meh? Not a big deal.
It's a major issue. It is a major issue, particularly in Alaska. particularly in Alaska. A lot of there's just it, this is this has been something that's been controversial for a long time, whether this gets built or not. And you have different types of coalitions that have formed in the state of Alaska. You've got tribal coalitions, environmental group coalitions, hunting, angling coalitions. You have a whole host of coalitions that have formed in opposition to this. You also have some that have formed in support of this. And it's one of those classic conflicts between economic development and habitat protection, right? And like the debate of, there's a lot of times we have the discussion of, can you do both? And a lot of times there's you want to try and do both if you can. And this falls into the camp of a lot of folks are saying up there, I don't think we can do both. So I think it's a big deal because you've had this percolating for such a long time in an area that's known as one of the largest intact ecosystems left in the United States.
Yeah, it's fair to say this is like everybody's sort of like a sacrifice area, right? Where you have areas within, a given national forest or something else where you have a whole lot of pressure. So you're like, oh, we're going to have an ATV area. What is it? Yeah, it's going to be degraded, but it's going to be our sacrifice area. And then there are areas that you reserve that you're like, well, this one's going to be a higher quality habitat. We're not going to apply the same things carte blanche across the board that we apply in some of the other areas, because it's just going to be, we're going to preserve this. So I think it's fair to say this is an area, because it's so untouched. The concept here is like, we can't get it back once we start to touch it. This is a place that we should probably leave alone. If you will, it's like the opposite side of a coin from the sacrifice area. And we do that in the hunting space too. We do that in other management spaces, right? Where we decide there are given areas where we're going to give out a bajillion tags. There's general areas. There's areas where we're going to anticipate having a lot of hunter pressure. We're going to be okay with that. But we're not going to do that the same across the board. We're going to have some areas where we have limited access. We have limited the ability of people to get in. We're going to manage those areas different for trophy species and for trophy animals, for trophy opportunities, and for the once in a lifetime type. And it's okay to have both of those areas. And I think that's, what we're talking about here is like, okay, well, is this one of those areas that we just need to keep our hands off? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way of describing it. It's like I said, it becomes this classic case of, like I would call this in some ways similar to the boundary waters fight in the lower 48. And no, I mean, it's not even that close. Boundary waters, there's some other development in the area, right? There are other mines in the boundary waters area. And the fear is this particular mine and the type of mine would cause irreversible pollution. Here we're talking about it's
a new spot.
New spot. There's nothing, no infrastructure, no roads.
And once it stops being a new spot, you can't get it back. It's never going to be that again. It's going to, that's the challenge. Like once you cut the first road,
it's a lot easier to cut the second road. It's also a lot easier to cut the second and third and fourth roads too, when you have that first one.
Yeah. And it is interesting how, like, depending on where we are and like what stage in our lives or who we are, like how you take a different viewpoint of some of this stuff, like how in some areas where we might, we're going to say like, well, you've heard me joke about, Matt Rinnella's worst nightmare before is like some of these areas where like he wants to see less hunter pressure, but he also thinks hunters should be able to get to all the spots that they should be able to get to. And like, this is, there's certainly a push and pull there from, a hunter perspective about like, well, I want to be able to hunt there, right? Well, can I get in there? And there's some places that we just have to be okay with, like, man, if I can't hike there, if I'm too old, well, that's my day's past. It's somebody else's turn. I had my opportunity to go to that special spot that was really hard to get to. Now it's somebody else's turn to have that spot exist. I don't need to try and break my way into that spot. And so it's a cool issue. So good response, Dave. Let's talk about your next one, which is a couple of members of the Senate from Montana
and House.
Senate and the House. Who's the House member? I'm sorry.
Yeah, one Senate, one House.
One Senate, one House have announced that they are retiring.
Yeah.
And let's start with Ryan Zinke.
Yeah.
Who is retiring from the House.
Yeah, and they both, it was a surprise. Both
let's talk
these
about Zinke first.
were surprises. So
yeah, and they're both Montana, which is very interesting. And so do we want to talk about them at the same time or separately?
I'm fine talking about them at the same time. We can bounce back
and
forth
forth
ping pong.
What do you think this issue? Would you say
Senator Daines is the other one?
Yes. So Zinke and Daines are both retiring. Is this a major issue, a minor issue, or meh?
In our space, it's a pretty major issue until you know who's replacing them.
I think it's a major issue across the board. Like, I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter whether you're in the hunting space or if you just want to be a raw political animal. It's probably even more important, because in the hunting space, I'd say it's almost like, frankly, I think it's kind of a meh in Montana, because I actually don't think it's going to matter a whole lot. I could be wrong, but I'm just going to pitch this as my gut reaction. I don't think if you've got somebody that you elect from Montana, if they go through the vetting process and they work their way up through primaries in Montana, I don't think you're going to get somebody who's bad on hunter issues. And I just think that because I don't know that you can get elected in Montana if you're bad on hunting issues. And I could be wrong. But there's going to be different, of course, shades of gray to that. But I think whichever party you come from, Montana is one of the states that kind of rejects the common claim that you have to choose. Let's say if you're hunters, you care about A, conservation, and B, Second Amendment rights. I think Montana is one of those states that fights that and says, like, no, we don't have to choose in Montana. We can care about these things regardless of what political stripes we wear. And so that's where I said, like, I'm not sure how much it matters there.
I'm going to push
There's
going
to be some nuance to that. I'm
going to push and say, here's why I think it does
matter. Okay.
There. Because I think you're right to the extent that Montana is a very, very, like, you're not going to get elected if you're not pro public lands. You're not going to get elected if you're not pro hunting or pro Second Amendment. Like, you're just
it's going to be real hard.
It's going to be really, really hard. So those things can all
you better be running against a terrible candidate.
So those things can all be true. And at the same time, you could have a major setback nationally. And here's what I would say. Why I'd say that. Senator Daines is largely credited with helping to have delivered the Senate for Republicans in the last election. Right? He was
100%.
Right? He was a big time fundraiser. He was a big time champion. He's been given a lot of credit for helping nationally. Helping deliver the Senate for Republicans, which means because of that, it creates some chips he can play. Right? It gives him some leverage and some opportunity. And if some of these conservation issues are high priority issues, it gives him leverage. And I can give you an example of one where without Senator Daines, it wouldn't have happened. And I'm worried that without him, there's some things that won't happen. And that would be the permanent funding and reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the maintenance backlog funding for national parks. That happened because Senator Daines was in an election, in a competitive election, and said, I need this, right? And got the White House on board supporting it and was able to help deliver that along with a senator from Colorado.
Yeah, well, and the same thing happened in the House with Zinke on the public land sales issue.
That was going to be the next thing I mentioned. Yeah,
Zinke was the guy that got out in front of it, and it worked for him, and he had that leverage. Why? He had that leverage because in the state of Montana, he said, these things are so important to the constituents of the state of Montana that you're making this an unworkable candidacy for me if you do this to us. You cannot do this. And so in his heart, like, he's pro public lands, sure. But the political reality of it is it gives him political chips to be able to say, like, you can't do this. And so there's certain, like, on these issues, there's a certain amount of power and clout that comes from having somebody that politically, right? If Montana weren't that way, those chips wouldn't have been there to be cashed in either of those situations. And so that's just a unique thing about Montana and the public lands issue. It can be the same way on other issues. You're like, right? If you've got states that are predictable votes on things like the Second Amendment, and then you find a state where, Heinrich, in New Mexico might be one that in certain instances you could say like he's going to buck his party on some things. Well, it's advantageous to sportsmen to, have diversity within those who represent you. And so it is going to be interesting to see what happens and where Montana goes.
Yeah. And were either of them perfect on conservation issues? Absolutely not. Right.
No,
because nobody is, and they made trade-offs here and there. They had to make decisions. Sometimes they were decisions that, the conservation community as a whole would look at and say, on the whole, I don't think that's good for conservation. But then at the same time, they'd come in and be champions for things that really, really did matter. And as they were trying to figure out, because they have a lot of constituencies and they've got an economy in that state that has multiple sectors that generate the revenue for that state's economy, and they have to be champions for all of those things. And so they have to balance all these different things. But you're losing two people. The other thing about Zinke that you're losing is he was former Secretary of Interior under the first Trump administration, and even though he ended up having to resign, it doesn't change the fact that he was in that role, and there's a certain amount of clout that comes with that and carries over into his time in the House as well. And so he had the ability to do some things that maybe some other representatives wouldn't. And one of those was being that champion for public lands and forming the Public Lands Caucus, being the person that helped form it with Representative Vasquez of New Mexico and recruit others to join it. And so you lose a champion there too.
You know what I'm going to find interesting is how they deal with this now that they've announced their retirements. The question I have, like in terms of the timing and everything, is as you know, there's this little parlor trick that politicians in Wyoming successfully played multiple times, where when a guy knew he wasn't coming back, they went through a process to pick the replacement, whether it be a voting process or because of some other loss, they had to replace the guy. Anyway, they slide the new guy in before the term ends, and so the guy A retires. If this makes sense to explain to everybody, guy A retires. A few days before the beginning of the session, the governor appoints the replacement, and so now your replacement comes in, gets sworn in, and now has seniority over everybody else in his class because he knew he was going to leave anyway. You knew who you wanted to replace him with anyway. And so now you've been able to get leverage for your guys on Capitol Hill and give them an edge in leadership moving forward. And so that happened in Wyoming a number of times, and it's how Wyoming has managed to, in some ways swing above their weight in national politics in the Congress.
Yeah, Montana's not doing that, but they're doing. I mean, they both did cool something, but they both did something not dissimilar, right? And I know it got, I know this because I've talked to some. It got some Democrats all wound up and angry about this, right? But trying to fix an outcome in an election, right? Senator Daines waited and waited and waited and didn't make the announcement that he was going to retire until I think it was the day before the filing deadline in state for filing for federal office. So there was really no time for
build a strong candidate
with either party, and it was coordinated that they coordinated with the success, who they wanted the successor to be, and immediately that very day he makes the announcement, the presumed successor files and has the endorsement of the entire delegation, the governor, and the president. So
So they did the same thing.
So they kind of did the same thing in a different way.
I think Zinke's I think Zinke's is going to be I don't know much about the candidate. And so I'm not from Montana. Other people in Montana are going to know more about this than me. I'm beginning to learn about them now, but I think that one's going to be the more competitive race. And we don't need to bore everybody with the politics. Yeah. We'll just say this is like reject the idea that you have to choose and let your candidate be good on, one side of sportsman's issues or another. Just demand that they're good on both. That's the thing to do. Just, tell them like, you represent me. I care about my rights and I care about my access. Don't take either. And so, that's just what I'd encourage everybody to do as you move forward and deal with these things.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to give a big thank you to both of them, even though in the past few weeks, I've been kind of frustrated with Representative Zinke because of, his push for the CRA on the Boundary Waters mineral withdrawal, wanting to push that project forward. That's been frustrating to me, but I was deeply, deeply grateful to him last summer for standing up for public lands the way he did and killing that proposal.
Would you fight him?
No, because he.
Okay, just checking.
I would almost certainly lose. That's why I said I was. But despite my frustration over the past couple of weeks there with that particular issue, I'd still say like deep appreciation and thanks to both of them for their service to their state and to their country and to the resources we care about. I think on the whole, they've done some good things for conservation, and I appreciate the leadership that they've shown. And I don't agree with them on everything.
Yeah, but let's have everybody do more good things.
Yeah, and
let's
find out what their legacies are. Let's find out what they want their legacy to be, and help them get that done from a conservation legacy standpoint this year. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but let's do that because let's make conservation their legacy and help them get it done this year.
Because we're friends. We're not like Ryan Bronson that insists that everybody speak in turn. Like we can talk at the same time.
All right, go.
No, I was just going to say, like, this is just a great, like, it's a learning experience. It's okay for us to disagree as sportsmen. It's okay for us to, like, you and I have some really strong disagreements on different subjects. We typically don't air them on the podcast, but there's resource issues like where you and I just think opposite sides of the coin about how to deal with something. And that's fine. We're still really good friends and we're going to argue about those things. And when I win those arguments, it's going to be okay. You're not going to be mad. You're not going to hold a grudge.
We argued this week about it for like an hour, and I felt like I was.
But it's okay.
Off the ledge.
It's okay. It's okay to disagree about stuff.
Yeah.
It's okay to disagree about stuff between different parties. It's okay to disagree about stuff in the same party. What we have to remember at the end of the day is like these are all workshops of ideas. And you know what? You were right. And I was wrong on the argument that we were having. Like the more I thought about it, like I was wrong. And that's okay. It's okay to say like, no, there does need to be, some tweaking of something rather than now on the issue of funding for wildlife, you were wrong. You
can see me smile. I'm like, I'm just going to clip this section and make it a reel. No. So it's nice and short where it's
on the subject of lottery tickets, you were wrong. But on the other subject, you were right. Okay.
All right. We got one last. I think we're down to the last topic.
Is this
your topic?
Yeah. I looked on, and I think this is one we'd like some listener feedback on. It's like, what are these things? Is it good to talk about these things? Should we be talking about them more? And if there's specific areas that you want to talk about them. So we did a little internet sleuthing and we looked at what are the top 5 issues that the interwebs believe are important to sportsmen this year. And I'm going to read you these.
By the way, I got a 6th one.
And then you can ask me.
A bonus issue.
And then we're going to both vote on whether or not we think that they are major issues, minor issues, or meh issues. So the first one is public land access, securing and expanding public land access remains a top priority along with managing impacts of development. Major, minor, meh.
Until I can get everywhere, major.
I agree. It's a major issue. It's access is still the most important issue that limiting for sportsmen, and it's not an easy issue. There's complexity to it. I think that the Ambler Road and other issues we've talked about recently, like if you can step back and look at the nuance of these things, you go like, oh, um, access doesn't necessarily mean the same thing in the same way everywhere. The same highway doesn't have to go there, but at the same time, the ability to get into a place, I think that's critical. And at every level, it is the thing that keeps us from having more people being able to participate in hunting and shooting sports, from keeping people participating in hunting and shooting sports, and then making hunting and shooting sports more enjoyable once people get here. Because crowding is an issue, and so we have to figure out how to manage that access. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a major issue. I agree.
Yep. All right. What's your second one?
Technological shift. The rapid adoption of new technologies like smart this and that. Like that's it. Like electric hunting bikes, drones. Major issue, minor issue, meh issue.
I wish there was one more in between major and minor. Because like I'd call
that's
it
what meh is. Meh is the middle.
No, I think meh is below minor. Meh is like I don't really care. Minor is like it's an issue, but like I'd almost call it an intermediate issue. Like it's something, or an emerging issue, or I don't know what it is entirely, but it's certainly an issue. I think e-bikes into places are, as that technology continues to improve, is going to continue to be an issue. Some of the things we talked about in Idaho, those are going to be issues in a lot of states that folks are going to have to grapple with. But you said one thing that kind of stuck with me, and that's why I call it an intermediate and not major issue, is that there seems to be a lot of consensus around some of this already. And so I think it's an issue, but I think it's one that can be, especially around some of the technological advances, I think many of them can be relatively easily and effectively addressed. There might be a few outliers that are harder. So that's why I'm like, I think it might be, I'm adding a category of intermediate.
I agree with you. One of the things that I think is interesting about it is, though, when we talk about it, I think there's a traditional area where we're more comfortable talking about technology, and then there's areas where it's like, I don't know if you want to call it a blind spot, but e-bikes is a phenomenal example, right? Like, we're pretty quick to talk about something like, well, the scope that you put on your gun, and I think we've been looking at that all wrong. I think that the issue we need to look at is not, whether or not something has a battery in it, but is it making a decision for you? It's the, with technology, it's the smart, and smart meaning not like it's intelligent because it tells you what temperature it is, but meaning, is a computer making a decision for you as we move into this AI world? And I think it's the same way with drones. I think it's the same thing with, cameras that take a picture for you and send it to your phone and tell you when the deer shows up. It's like, are these things doing your job for you? And I think we need to shift and think about technology that way in terms of fair chase. And so I think it's almost less of a technology discussion and more of a hunting ethics discussion, because we're always going to have access to new technology. So the question should be, I think we really have to work on discussing the ethic. And that's where this is interesting, because I don't think people have equated other tools like e-bikes with that. Right. I think in the past, we've been really quick to talk about the thing you're holding in your hand, but people haven't thought about, frankly, what we rode there. I think that's an interesting challenge that we don't, do we talk about, like, other than the wilderness, right? If we say in wilderness, that's one thing, but, man, it's getting way easier to hunting is getting easier, and the technology is far greater than just guns. And so how do we teach the ethic that says, like, look, this is about more than that? The experience is more than that. It's not just about pulling the trigger, but man, I actually think it's a major issue trying to figure out how to do it right.
Let me put one more piece on that too. I still haven't decided if it's major or not. I'm still sticking with intermediate, I think. But game and fish departments around the country set their license quotas, their hunting license quotas, their season lengths, all these things based on a host of factors. But one of the things that factors in is hunter success, number of days to harvest, success rate of the harvest, and yep. If you add more and more technologies that make hunting easier, you're increasing the chances that your success rate is going to increase. And if your success rate increases, that's going to affect opportunity over the long term, because they're going to have to adjust the number of licenses that are available. If the success rate goes from, because you want to have a success rate in a certain place to have as much opportunity for as many people as possible. So there, in some units, you might be actually targeting lower success rates. And some units might already have, for pronghorn, it might not matter. You already have 90% success rate. The new technology might not matter. It might be purely a fair chase. But in some areas, you might have a success rate that's 30%, but you have a ton of opportunity, and it enables people to get out there because it's an over-the-counter license or something. And if all of a sudden the success rate goes from 30% to 50% even, you may see some areas that say, ooh, we can't do a general unit anymore, or we have to shorten the season, or we have to do something to compensate for this increased harvest that's going to reduce opportunity in some way. And so I think those are the things, in addition to the fair chase, that you have to think about when we're talking about technological advances.
I think agencies have to be willing to do that, and that's an important piece. I don't think we can go to the stupidest way to do it, which is just to say we're going to make it so that we're going to make we're going to make people hunt with a rock. You've got to have some nuance in how you deal with these things, and I really appreciate those states and those folks who are looking at that. And one of the things that I think we need to realize, and it's funny because I was having this discussion about a shooting sports league the other day, is that everybody is on a different spot on their hunting journey. And I think as we craft these opportunities, we have to keep in mind that everybody's opportunity probably doesn't need to look the same. It probably shouldn't look the same. And so if you're the hardcore hunter who values spending, a month in the backcountry, and that's your priority, that's awesome. That's what you should do. You want it to be really hard. You want to be really challenged. That's great. That's not everybody. That's you. And so when you are advocating for that, remember that you shouldn't be advocating that everybody has to play your game. You should be advocating for a space to play your game, for the opportunity to play your game when you're not getting run over by somebody with an e-bike or something, but at the same time, you have to respect that not everybody's going to be in that same space on their hunting journey. And we have to create opportunities. There has to be equality of opportunity. And so you need to respect that that's not always going to look like everybody hunting exactly the same way that you do, with the same weapon that you do, the same season that you do. And that's okay. And that becomes difficult as these opportunities, the other thing that, that Utah legislator there told me the challenge is Utah's got a bigger population. And the challenge is, like, everybody wants to hunt every season, everywhere, all the time, and like however they want. That's what doesn't work, right? Is like they're saying, like, well, no, I don't, I want everything. And unfortunately, this is something that we have to share. And so, like, you just can't get everything. You have to prioritize your thing, and then you have to be willing to share it a little bit. And then I know people don't want to hear that, but until we get into the world where, to be frank, there's only so many mountains, and there's only so much habitat. And, as much as we want to increase habitat and opportunity and things like that, we're not going to double the number of elk that are on that mountain. And so we have to figure out what is the just way to share that.
All right. Give me your third one.
Disease management, CWD. Major, minor, meh.
I think a lot of people would say major.
I think I agree.
So, yeah. I mean, Yeah.
We don't need to talk about it because we're not smart enough.
Okay.
To talk about CWD.
I'm a little nervous to talk about it, but it's
a big one, and it's something that people need to be paying attention to, and not overreacting to, but smartly reacting to. There you go. How about federal policy on ammunition types on federal lands?
I mean, this has been
Dave. It's a meh.
Yeah.
This is not the internet. No, for some reason says it's a big deal. It's just not.
It's been like a debate for. I mean, there'll continue to be dialogue about it.
It's going to be a debate, but there's not a fire here. There's not, there's no justification for making this rule our lives. It's just like, it's a meh.
Yeah. And until there's smoke.
Next.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not.
What's next?
State level regulation changes on things like hunter blaze orange or pink for taking big game.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah, it's meh. It's nothing. It's a meh. Yeah.
like how's that even on the list?
It's the interweb said. Like, yeah, hey, I didn't make the list. All right. That's mine. What's yours?
That's the one I would add is funding for state wildlife agencies to manage the whole suite of wildlife in their states.
That's major. That's interesting. That one's like, it's tough because it's not a minor issue. It's certainly not a meh. But in terms of a major issue, it's different because it's a different way of having to deal with it. It's almost like that's like a long, slow boil rather than a fire.
I actually, if I were ranking the list that you gave, I would put that at the
You'd put it
top.
Closer to the top.
I put it at the top of the list as like the big issue of of the next generation is how do we pay for this? How do we pay for
lottery tickets?
Yeah, I know that's what you think.
Yeah. Scratchers.
We've talked about it before. We'll talk about it again. I don't mean on the scratchers. I just mean on that funding piece. But I think that's a very real thing. There's been some new reporting that's come out about things like how much freshwater mussels have declined in the past 50 years, how much bird species in the country have declined, how much fragmentation we've had, how much just general habitat we've lost, how much reptiles have declined in the past 50 years, like across the board, nearly every type of wildlife in this country has declined.
Would you like to propose your favorite 3 ways to get it done? Because I have them. I have my favorite 3.
I know you do, but I'm looking at the time and I'm like, that's a different episode because that 3 will double. Well, this is one of the things we argue about, and this will turn into a 2-hour podcast. So I think we have to, my recommendation is that we come back to that discussion when we have an entire hour to dedicate to it. Because,
all right. Well, Dave, that was good, man. Good discussion.
I don't think I'm wrong about
that.
Nope.
And we've been doing this for 57 minutes. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. All right. So thank you everybody for listening. As always, have not started our new email address. So you can still get us at yourmountain@itsyourmountain.com. We'll let you know when we got the new stuff going. Until then, well, first of all, shoot us shoot us messages on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Send us an email.
And go find us on YouTube.
Go find us on YouTube. And do us a favor. I know everybody says it, but like it, subscribe to it.
Hey, you know what?
Subscribe.
You know where we're gonna take our comments from now on? YouTube. Yeah, on YouTube. That's how we are going to now. If you want to talk to Dave, you talk to YouTube. That's how you talk to us. You go to YouTube,
send a
make it happen.
Comment on YouTube, whatever it is. Help us get found more in the algorithm. Do all the things. Do some guerrilla marketing on our behalf. If you're in Reddit pages or whatnot, like talk about us. If you like what you hear. If you don't, like, silence is golden. But if you're loving what you're hearing, talk about us in some places. Little guerrilla marketing here could be deeply appreciated. In the meantime, and as always, remember that life is about experiences. So go have one.
Stop recording. All right.